All right, so can the president formulate a strategy for success in Afghanistan that can also win the support of the citizens who are concerned right now in the United States about jobs, the national debt, and our economy? For some answers and some thoughts, we're joined now by Stephanie Sanok. Stephanie is a senior fellow at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. She has also served as a policy advisor to Congress, and she's also served at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Stephanie, good to have you with us on Bloomberg. You just heard what Juliana Goldman says, that the recommendation is going to be for a drawdown of 30,000 troops in July. What's your impression? Is that going to be big enough to really change the disposition of the fighting in Afghanistan?
Well, the president will announce tonight that he is going to make good on his promise made in December of 2009 to start the withdrawal in July of this year. He's mentioned, or he will be mentioning, that 10,000 troops will come home this year and 20,000 more next year. But the question becomes, what kind of troops is he bringing home? Is he going to bring home combat troops, counterterrorism troops, or the advisors to the Afghan National Security Forces? And that's what a lot of us will be watching most closely. What kind of troops will be coming home?
Well, in addition to what kinds of troops, what does it say about the progress of the war in Afghanistan? Can we say mission accomplished?
I think you can say mission accomplished if your objective was to find and kill Osama bin Laden. Right now, there is no clear end game for Afghanistan, and bringing home troops isn't necessarily the answer.
Has there been any change as far as the military is concerned? Juliana mentioned that this is a sharper, quicker pullout of troops than many in the military community have wanted.
Clearly, the military community has called the gains that we've made there fragile and reversible. So they are very much in favor of keeping as many U.S. combat troops in Afghanistan for as long as possible. Politically, though, it leaves the president in a very untenable situation. He made the promise to surge 30,000 troops last year and to bring those folks home, and that's what tonight's speech is all about. Do
you think that it's going to work?
I have a hard time understanding what the administration's position is in Afghanistan. What is the end game that they have in mind? They've mentioned 2014 as a time where U.S. troops will come home in totality, and I have a hard time thinking that we can achieve nation building in Afghanistan that quickly.
Stephanie, we were just looking at some statistics. 1.3 trillion, that's with a T, trillion dollars spent on the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan to date. What's going to be left in terms of troop levels in Afghanistan after the withdrawal? We're talking about a total of 30,000. At least that's what we hear from a preview of the president's speech tonight.
Right now, we have about 100,000 U.S. troops serving in Afghanistan. So going with the president's speech tonight, withdrawal of 30,000 will leave just almost about 70,000 troops left there in December of 2012.
All right, but you also make the point, we've spoken about this, that it's not just U.S. troops that are being withdrawn. Our NATO partners are also pulling out.
You've heard announcements from the British government, the Germans, Italians, Dutch, Danes, that a lot of our coalition partners in Afghanistan are on a downward path, also aiming sort of at December 2012.
Well, having said that, doesn't that highlight the position of Afghanistan's President Karzai, that there's no real point in maintaining a long-term alliance with the NATO forces because, as you just described, eventually they'll all be gone?
You know, Afghanistan over time has had this experience again and again where people come into their country, try to rebuild them, and then disappear on them. So I think Hamid Karzai and his comments lately about being occupied by coalition forces is just a reflection of what the Afghan people have been through before.
What is the reflection on Capitol Hill based on what you know of the president's upcoming speech? Do you think that the withdrawal announcement will satisfy Republicans and Democrats?
I think President Obama will not satisfy anyone with his speech tonight. You've got factions within Congress who want withdrawal immediately, and you've got factions in Congress like Senator McCain and Senator Graham who want to stay the course. They cite commanders on the ground saying gains have been fragile and reversible, and we need as many troops there for as long as possible.
Well, all right, so if that's the case, if there's some confrontation perhaps heating up between the military recommendations and what the president sees, Is this really just an economic move on the part of the president? We've announced that it costs about $1 billion a day to maintain the troops in Afghanistan.
It does cost about $120 billion a year to maintain our forces in Afghanistan. But I think this is really a political decision by the president, not an economic one. In December 2009, he talked about surging troops and then bringing them home. We're still talking about the same 30,000 troops that he sent into harm's way last year.
Have those gains come at great expense, not only in terms of money, but in terms of lives? Is that going to continue?
Well, because we've had more troops in Afghanistan, they've obviously created more targets for the Taliban and other types of insurgents. And so, yes, in terms of treasury, in terms of lives, and in terms of effort, this has become at a great cost to the United Nations, or rather, the United States.
Indeed. Stephanie, the former Secretary of Defense, Robert Gates, he's reported that there have been informal and tentative efforts to connect with the Taliban in Afghanistan on part of the United States. Do you think that that was a preemptive move because they knew that the drawdown was going to happen?
I think it's a perfect way to say it is a preventive move. I think what happened is Congress allocated about $100 million this year to reintegrate elements of the Taliban. Unfortunately, we've reintegrated just about 4 to 8% of our target audience of the Taliban. And so that hasn't been an overwhelming success to date.
Now, Stephanie, as someone that has served as a staff member on the House Armed Services Committee, you also served at the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. Are the Afghan troops and the police force, are they up to the task of policing Afghanistan?
Elements of the Afghan National Security Forces, whether you're talking about the Army or the police, have performed tremendously well. And there are parts of the country that are under their control right now. But we've heard about 2014 as the date of full withdrawal from Afghanistan. And that means the Afghan National Security Forces won't be ready to conduct independent operations and to provide for the security of their country for another 3.5 years.
Well, if that's the case, then are the gains that we've made in Afghanistan, as they are those going to come at peril?
They are going to be imperiled by this withdrawal.
And what do you think the reaction will be from the various political parties? You've mentioned that it's not, the speech might not satisfy anyone. Will there be any chance of reversing the course of withdrawal?
I think once the president announces this withdrawal, he's going to have to follow through with it. I think what will be impacted will be the kinds of troops that he is withdrawing. Is he going to withdraw combat troops, support troops, or the folks we have training and advising the Afghan National Security Forces? He's got a couple of choices. He's got some flexibility in this withdrawal.
Stephanie, you said that there'll be about 70,000 U.S. troops remaining in Afghanistan. Is their position going to be precarious or even more perilous because of this drawdown?
I think they would be in a much better place if we kept the 30,000 troops there from an effectiveness perspective. But we have amazing troops still on the ground in Afghanistan, and we will be in that same position in 2012. It's just a matter of the military commanders say more is better and for longer is better. And so it's really kind of what your risk tolerance is.
All right. I want to thank you very much. Stephanie Sanok from the Center for Strategic and International Studies joining us from Washington.